We're practicing trying to do services without any electricity. Last week, we didn't pay our electric bill quite on time and they turned the juice off, and we got it on just in time. This week, I'm sitting there on Saturday trying to write a sermon, and all of a sudden, Dick came over in a panic. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? I don't know. Do it in the dark. So we were practicing for the future here. During the last couple of months, we have been in the 6th chapter of Luke, and we've been dissecting and elaborating on the Sermon on the Plain, Jesus' sermon. And somehow this week I felt God impressing me to read the whole sermon in one sitting. And I told God, I said, that's a terrible idea. You don't understand these people's attention span. And God said, well, I gave these people an imagination. So you need to inspire their imagination to actually be there as my son is giving his sermon. So I thought, well, how do I do that? Well, the best way I know is to try to put you in the actual place that Jesus gave his sermon. And he gave it at the Sea of Galilee. Now down here is the Dead Sea, and over here is Jerusalem. So about 90 miles above Jerusalem is the Sea of Galilee. Now, Israel is approximately 7,600 miles from where you're sitting right now. It's a long ways. But there are a number of things that are tying us together. I stole this from the kids' Bible place back there. Here we are in Rosarito, and if you follow this latitude or parallel all the way around to where you finally get to Israel, you'll find that we are on the same latitude. So, the weather and the landscape in Israel is very similar to what you will see right here. Now the Sea of Galilee, as you can see, is inland a ways, so you got to kind of think somewhere between Tecate and Mexicali. It's dry, it's dusty, but this is, in fact, a freshwater lake. We have a view from a satellite here. This is the Sea of Galilee from a satellite, or if you were to fly over it. And if this were better, if we could see better, it looks like we're going up a hill here. All the way around, it looks like there's a hill. In fact, this is called the Golan Heights up here. Down here, we go into the Jordan Valley, which is a desert. Above this, we have Mount Hermon, which is snow-capped. And so we have this Sea of Galilee. Now, actually, the locals call this the Lake of Gennesaret. Kenner means park in Hebrew. Can you imagine why they might want to call this lake park? It's in the shape of a heart. And so it is that Jesus is ministering around the Sea of Galilee. And he is coming down on the north end of the sea and going to start to minister over in this area on a flat, level meadow. So, we have a picture, a long view, of the Sea of Galilee. Let's see the next one. There we go. So here we have what looks like hills all the way around the sea, but in fact, this is a canyon. This sea is 700 feet below sea level. This is sea level. This is the Sea of Galilee. Now, the Sea of Galilee, interestingly enough, we have something else in common with it. The San Andreas Fault runs from San Francisco down to Mexicali. And the San Andreas Fault joins the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate together, and they rub together, and that's why we have so many earthquakes in our particular area. The Sea of Galilee is a plate, or joins the plate, the African Plate and the Asian Plate come together and then go down through the Jordan Valley. So it's again a place like this that has a number of earthquakes. Okay, so here we are. Now we're standing in a meadow in this area here, looking out at the ocean, and Jesus comes on the scene. Let's have the next slide. There you are. Okay, let's just imagine. Now, I know this is hard for some of us. It's been a while, but let's imagine. Jesus is standing right here, and the crowd comes back and back and back along this field. And you can see that there is some grass, and there's also some prickly things. These are, I think they call these some kind of artichoke. And there's maybe some tumbleweed and some other stuff there. And you're standing in this field. And as you're standing in this field, I want you to feel your home-woven garment on the back of your neck. Just feel that you get this home-woven garment, and it's rough on the back of your neck. And then I think you need to imagine either your hair is blowing in a cool breeze that's coming down from the Mount Hermon, or your forehead is dripping sweat from a warm wind coming up from the Jordan Valley, which is literally a desert. And you're looking for a place to sit. Well, you see a spot and you go over there and you find yourself next to a fisherman with very smelly hands. And along with them is a little hyperactive kid with a snotty, runny nose and dirty hands. Next to him, a priest in a beautiful white robe who is doing his best to use his hands to shoo away this dirty little kid. And then there's a woman who's moaning as she wrings her hands. And finally, all of a sudden, there's this hush that comes over the entire crowd as Jesus raises his hands and starts to scan through each and every person sitting in front of him. Blessed, God blesses you who are poor, for the kingdom of God is yours. God blesses you who are hungry now, for you will be satisfied. God blesses you who weep now, for in due time you will laugh. What blessing awaits you when people hate you and exclude you and mock you and curse you as evil because you follow the Son of Man. When that happens, be happy. Leap for joy, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. And remember, their ancestors treated the ancient prophets the same way. The fisherman grumbles next to you. Talk about making lemonade out of lemon. What sorrow awaits you who are rich, for you have only happiness now. What sorrow awaits you who are fat and prosperous now, for a time of awful hunger awaits you. What sorrow awaits you who laugh now, for your laughing will turn to mourning and sorrow. And what sorrow awaits you who are praised by the crowd now, for their ancestors also praised the false prophets. The priest snickers, pot calls the kettle black. But to you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse If someone slaps you on the cheek, offer the other cheek also. If someone demands your coat, offer the shirt also. Give to anyone who asks, and when things are taken away from you, don't try to get them back. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. A woman behind you screams, "I love you, Jesus!" If you love only those who love you, why should you get credit for that? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you get credit? Even sinners do that much. And if you lend money only to those who can repay you, why should you get credit? Even sinners will lend to other sinners for a full return. I say, love your enemies. Do good to them. Lend to them without expecting to be repaid. And then your reward from heaven will be very great. And you will truly be acting as the children of the Most High, for He is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. You must be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. The priest stands up in a huff and quotes Moses, "Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth." Do not judge others. You will not be judged. Do not condemn others, or it will come back against you. Forgive others, and you will be forgiven. Give, and you will receive. Your gifts will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more and more, running over and pouring into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. The fisherman shakes his head. This guy is out of this world. Can you have a blind person lead another? Won't they both fall into a ditch? Students are not greater than their teachers, but the student who is fully trained will become like the teacher. And why do you worry about the speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying, "Friend, let me help you get rid of that little speck in your eye," when you can't see past the log in your own eye? Hypocrites! First, get rid of the log in your own eye, and then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Jesus points to a house down by the shore with a little orchard and a large garden. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot produce good fruit. Trees are identified by its fruit. Figs are never gathered from a thorn bush, and grapes are not picked from a bramble bush. A good person produces good things from the treasury of the good in his heart. And an evil person produces evil things from the treasury in their heart. What you say flows from what is in your heart. So, why do you keep calling me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say? I will show you what it's like when someone comes to me, listens to my teaching, and then follows it. It is like a person building a house who digs deep and lays a foundation on solid rock. And when the flood waters rise and break against that house, it stands firm because it is well built. But anyone who hears and does not obey is like a person who builds a house without a foundation. And when the floodwaters sweep down against that house, it will collapse into a heap of ruin. As Jesus turns and walks back towards Capernaum, you realize that you've been sitting on a sharp stone and flinch. You're in turmoil. What has this man said? How could anybody say these things and mean these things and expect me to do these things? Augustine, the most influential teacher in the Western branch of Christianity outside of Paul, pondering the idea of treasures in our heart, comments this way. The heart strives to unite with what a man believes will make him happy. Now, I don't remember, possibly you don't recall, that the Beatitudes that started out Jesus' sermon essentially are blessings, but they can also be translated happy. Happy is he who is poor. Happy is he who is hungry. Happy is he who mourns. The heart strives out after what is going to make it happy. Jesus is dealing with what is going to make us happy. How do we, in fact, have an everlasting happiness? Our final goal is never really to make money. We make money so that we can buy things that are going to make us happy. When the ice cream man used to come down our street, I would beg my mother for a dime, it was a long time ago, to buy a fudge-sickle. Oh, the first bite of that fudge-sickle. I can go there right now. It's so cool and sweet. Not hard to imagine. And it made me happy until I bit into the stick. And then I realized that no matter how infinitely small little bites and nibbles I took, that fudge-sickle was not going to be around much longer. What sorrow awaits you who are rich? For you have only happiness which will melt and make your hands miserably sticky. Termites eat our dream home. Rust consumes our Cadillac. The Playboy model wrinkles and turns to dust. The bottom line in Jesus' sermon is the only hope of everlasting happiness we have is not in this world, but in God's blessing. Amen. And the way God dispenses his blessing is when we bless others. It comes back to us, pressed down, shaken together. But who has the good treasure in their heart to endlessly turn the other cheek? Somebody slaps you once, okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, all right. Slaps me again, oh, I don't think so. Now, my words on Sunday, what comes out of my mouth on Sunday, may sound holy. Of course, I've had a whole week to write something down here and think about it very carefully. But check me out on Monday. When I'm tired and I'm hungry, and the renter calls up and says, "My faucet is leaking all over the place, and the floor has a giant puddle on it. And I go down there with my wrenches and my screwdrivers and my drills and whatever. I fudge it and I fidget and it keeps leaking and I can't fix it and I don't know what's wrong. And I decide to drill a big hole and I drill a big hole and I shock myself. Well, I'll guarantee you, those treasures that come out of my mouth in that moment, I will never share in this church. If we are honest, in this world, none of us can continue to give our shirt to every needy Tom, Dick, and Harry. Maybe Tom, but not Dick and Harry. So, as we leave the meadow on the Sea of Galilee and come back to Rosarito, we all have the same problem that the people that initially heard this sermon had when they heard Jesus say the words that came from the Holy Ghost through his mouth to that crowd. How in the world are we going to ever be able to do all the gracious, merciful, compassionate, loving, giving things that Jesus has commanded us to do? Now, Augustine lived in ancient Greek about the year 400. And at that time, they believed that all of physics, all of the physical world were made up of 4 elements: earth, water, air, and fire. So Augustine took this, considering, what's it all about? How do we deal with this thing? And he basically says, look, your heart is like the will, and it decides to pursue what it thinks is going to make it happy. And if you pursue this world or the earth, it's going to be like a millstone eventually. It may give you some temporary pleasures now, as Jesus told us in his sermon. But ultimately, it's going to be like a millstone around your eternal neck, and it's going to grind you into dust. But if you are in a passionate love and on fire for God, the fire rises up into heaven. Well, let's face it. He got the science wrong, but the principle's right. There is no way we are going to enter the kingdom of heaven slavishly striving and struggling to be good, in hopes that Jesus will say, oh, you did such a good job, you gave so much off your back, and you turned your cheek at least once, and you did all these things, therefore come on into my kingdom. No, it doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. The only way we can enter the kingdom of heaven is through a burning love that actualizes itself in a burning desire to serve our loving, compassionate Father. How do we get that love? That's the question that we are all struggling with. Where does that love, who's going to ignite that fire? Well, Jesus knew that we couldn't love our enemy. He knew it. That we couldn't keep turning our cheek and getting the shirt off our back. He knew. When he said the words, he knew. But before he left, he said to us, I'm going to send you someone who can help you with that. After Jesus ascended into his heaven, his disciples, who had been with him in the meadow, who had heard his teaching every single day, who had seen all the miracles that Jesus performed, who heard all the kind words that he had for everybody and how he cared for everybody, were in an upper room shaking in their sandals, hiding out fearful. Jesus is gone. What are we going to do? Oh, it's not going to work. When suddenly a powerful wind came from heaven, and they saw what seemed like tongues of fire that came to rest on each of them. And all of them were filled with the Holy Spirit. Those trembling, shaking, fearful folks got up off their bottoms, opened the door, went into the streets where they prophesied and preached. Peter preached the sermon of all sermons, and 3,000 people accepted Christ as their Lord.
Amen.
And were baptized. In God's Spirit, we listen to Jesus' teaching, and we can hear it. We can't hear it. Otherwise, it's like a fisherman. What the heck is this? Is he nuts? Or we're like the priest. Come on! Who's the false prophet here? You're talking, doesn't make any sense. Eye for an eye. But in the Holy Ghost, we can hear what Jesus is all about. We hear His heart. And His heart comes into our heart. And as His heart comes into our heart is changed. It's reshaped. It functions differently. And the treasures there then are something that will glorify His Father in heaven. And then we can follow. Then we are people who have dug deep. And some of us need to dig very deep to get some of the junk out of our hearts. Dig deeper and deeper and deeper so that we can get to that foundation, that solid rock. And let Jesus plant His kingdom in that heart so that we can then rise up. Get up off of that meadow, having heard the word. And when the floodwaters come, and they're going to come, Monday morning always follows Sunday. That's a great sermon. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. Well, great. But so is Monday. Those floodwaters, they're going to come. And you're going to want to do something not too Christ-like, but in the power of the Holy Ghost. Dig deep. And there you'll find your solid rock. And there you'll stand firm against any storm. Now, another gift that Jesus gave us to help us in this journey of love. He gave us on the last night before He was crucified, when He sat with His disciples. I heard this the other day. It is probably the most important thing I've ever heard about one of Jesus' sermons. What was His last sermon? What was His last sermon? His last sermon was a meal. It was a meal. It was Him sitting down with these people that He loved and sharing His body and His blood. And this morning, we have the same opportunity to sit with Jesus. But you've got to use your imagination. You got to be there with Jesus. You got to see Him as He dispenses that bread and that wine, as He gives you all that He has, because the next day He is going to literally give you all that He has, so that you might have treasures, not filth, not sand, not grunge, but treasures in your heart.